I'm Olivia Rivera, 35 years old. My family called my art a waste of time, but at their anniversary gala, my $150 million gallery empire silenced their scorn. This is the story of how I proved them wrong and carved a fragile path to mend our broken ties. Growing up in the Rivera household was like living in a ledger where every entry was measured for profit and loss, and I was the unaccounted variable that didn't add up. My parents, Carlos and Elena Rivera, are meticulous accountants, their names a quiet force in Miami's financial circles, their ledgers balancing the books of businesses big and small. Our Coral Gables home was a testament to their precision walls lined with framed CPA certificates, shelves stacked with tax codes, the air heavy with the hum of calculators and practicality. My older brother Miguel was their golden son, a civil engineer whose bridge designs earned accolades, his blueprints a monument to the Rivera legacy. And then there was me, Olivia, the dreamer, the one who never fit their equation of numbers and structures. From my earliest memories, our home was a shrine to utility, every dinner a briefing on efficiency. My parents would dissect balance sheets or debate tax strategies, their voices sharp with logic, while Miguel, 4 years older, sketched bridge schematics on napkins, his ideas earning nods of approval. They had a plan for us, etched in the certainty of their spreadsheets. Miguel would build infrastructure, his work strengthening the Rivera name, and I'd follow a sensible path: accounting, finance, something to uphold our family's pragmatism. "You're a Rivera," my father would say, his voice a blend of pride and expectation, as if our name was a contract I was bound to honor. My mother would nod, her eyes gleaming with visions of my future CPA, her hands gesturing to a world of ledgers I never wanted. Their love was steadfast but rigid, and I was never skilled at fitting their formula. I was different, a splash of color in their monochrome world. While Miguel calculated load-bearing capacities and my parents audited accounts, I was drawn to beauty, to the way art could capture the soul's unspoken truths. At 9, I found a box of old paints in our attic, a forgotten gift from a long-gone aunt, their colors faded but vibrant to my eyes. I'd sneak up there after school, the attic's dim light casting shadows, and teach myself to paint on scraps of cardboard, guided by library books on technique. My first painting was a clumsy sunset, its oranges and purples uneven but alive. When I showed it to my 5th grade class and they gasped, I felt a rush I'd never known, a sense of creation that rivaled any blueprint. I ran home, my heart pounding, and showed it to my parents at dinner. "Look, I painted this," I said, holding up the cardboard, my voice bright with hope. My mother's smile was tight, her eyes flicking to my father. "That's sweet, Olivia," she said, her tone dismissive. "But focus on your math homework." My father was blunter, his voice sharp. "Painting's a hobby, not a future. Don't waste your time." Miguel was the worst. At 13, he was already a prodigy, winning engineering contests, his teachers calling him a future star. He'd barge into my room, see my canvas or sketchbook, and scoff, his laugh like a slap. "What's this, your little art project?" he'd say, flipping through my drawings. "You're gonna end up a starving artist, Liv, selling doodles on the street." I'd grit my teeth, my cheeks burning, and hide my work under my bed, shielding it from his scorn. His words cut deep, but they didn't stop me. Art was my refuge, the one place I could create without their judgment. In the attic's silence, brushing paint across cardboard, I wasn't the disappointing daughter or the overshadowed sister. I was an artist, a storyteller, someone who mattered. Middle school was when the rift widened, the tension between us growing sharper. My parents enrolled me in accounting workshops, hoping I'd inherit their knack for numbers. I'd sit through lectures on tax codes, my mind drifting to the paintings I was creating and secrete a portrait of our neighbor's dog, a vibrant market scene. At 12, I entered a local art contest, my first real test. I spent weeks on my entry, a painting of a Miami sunrise, using colors I'd mixed myself. When I won 3rd place, earning a $100 prize, I was over the moon, clutching my ribbon like a lifeline. I showed it to my parents at dinner, expecting pride, my voice trembling with excitement. "It's meaningful," I said, holding up the ribbon. My father barely glanced at it, his fork scraping his plate. $100 for a picture? He said, his tone flat. That's not a career, Olivia. My mother suggested I join the math club, something that builds real skills. Miguel, home from an engineering camp, smirked. Keep dreaming, Liv. Maybe you'll paint a paycheck one day. The table laughed, and I stared at my plate, my victory crumbling like dust. High school was a crucible, the pressure to conform intensifying with each passing year. My parents doubled down, pushing me toward AP Calculus and Economics, their vision of my future in a cubicle a relentless drumbeat. You're wasting your talent, my father would say, his voice heavy with disappointment. Accounting is where you'll make a mark. My mother was gentler but no less firm, her suggestions laced with concern. A finance degree is a safe path, Olivia. You're so smart, don't throw it away. Miguel, now in college for engineering, would call home with tales of his latest project, his voice brimming with confidence, my parents hanging on his every word. His success was a constant yardstick, a reminder of my inadequacy. Miguel's building the future, my mother would say, her eyes shining. You could too, if you applied yourself. I tried to please them, acing my classes, joining the business club to pad my resume, but my heart was in the art room, where I'd spend lunch hours painting, creating worlds that felt more real than their expectations. At 16, I entered a national art competition, a bold move that felt like stepping into the spotlight. I spent months on my entry, a large-scale painting of a Miami street festival, its colors vibrant with life, inspired by our neighborhood's energy. I poured everything into it late nights, skipped parties, my fingers stained with paint. When I won second place, earning a $2,000 scholarship and a feature in an art magazine, I thought naively that it would change their minds. I presented it at a family dinner, my hands sweaty, my voice trembling with hope. This could inspire people, I said, holding up the magazine, my painting on the cover. My father frowned, his glasses glinting under the chandelier. $2,000 for a painting? He said, his tone dripping with skepticism. That's not a plan, Olivia. My mother sighed, her smile patronizing. It's nice to have hobbies, dear, but why not focus on something serious like business? Miguel leaned back, his grin mocking. Nice picture, Liv, but it's not gonna pay the bills. Stick to something real, like me. The table erupted in laughter, their voices a chorus of dismissal, and I fled to my room, my throat tight, my magazine crumpled in my fist. That night, I vowed to prove them wrong not for their approval, but for the fire burning inside me. The summer before my senior year, I took a secret internship at a small art gallery in Miami, using my savings to cover bus fares. I'd leave the house at dawn, claiming I was studying at the library, and spend hours curating exhibits, cataloging pieces, learning the industry's pulse. The gallerists there were scrappy, passionate, their work a rebellion against the cold churn of commercial art. One, a woman named Sophia, saw my paintings and pulled me aside. You've got talent, Olivia, she said, her eyes fierce. Don't let anyone tell you this isn't enough. Her words were a lifeline, a validation I'd never gotten at home. I kept a sketchbook of her advice, her encouragement fueling my resolve. But when I accidentally left a paintbrush in the living room, my mother found it, her face tightening. You're still doing this art nonsense? She said, her voice sharp. You're wasting your potential, Olivia. Miguel's out there building bridges, why can't you be more like him? The comparison was a knife, twisting deeper each time, and I retreated to my room, my dreams locked away in hidden canvases. College was my rebellion, the moment I broke free from their script. I applied to NYU's Fine Arts program, one of the best in the world, and got in with a full scholarship, my portfolio of vibrant paintings earning praise from the admissions board. When I told my parents, the dining room went silent, the air thick with their disapproval. Art? My mother said, her voice sharp with disbelief, as if I'd announced I was dropping out. That's not a career, Olivia. My father shook his head, his eyes cold, his voice low. You're throwing away your potential, Olivia. Why can't you be more like Miguel? The comparison was a wound that never healed, each mention of Miguel's name a reminder of my inadequacy. Miguel, home from a project, tossed me a copy of his latest engineering journal, his smirk cutting. "Stick to numbers, Liv," he said. "Art won't get you anywhere." I stood my ground, my voice trembling but firm. "This is what I want. I'm doing it." They barely spoke to me for months, their silence louder than any lecture, their disappointment a weight I carried to New York. At NYU, I came alive, the shackles of their expectations falling away. The art studios were a wonderland of color, and possibility canvases stretching wall to wall, the air thick with paint and ambition, my classmates a tribe of dreamers who spoke my language, composition, emotion, impact. I stayed up late, painting scenes that captured the pulse of cities, the ache of human stories, learning to blend technique with heart. I built a portfolio of works, urban landscapes, portraits of strangers, abstracts pulsing with life, each one sharpening my vision. My professors called me a visionary, their praise a balm for the wounds of my childhood. I joined student groups focused on contemporary art, curated campus exhibits, and interned at indie galleries that shared my values. Every late night, every brushstroke was a step toward a dream I refused to let die. But every call home was a reminder of the chasm between us. "How's school?" my mother would ask, her tone cautious, as if probing for weakness. When I tried to explain my projects, a mural for a community center, a solo exhibit at a local gallery, to interrupt, her voice clipped. "That sounds creative, Olivia. Have you thought about accounting? It's not too late to pivot." My father was blunter, his questions laced with judgment. "Are you making money yet, or is this still a pastime?" Miguel was the worst, texting me links to his latest engineering projects, his success a constant jab. "Painted anything worth hanging yet?" He'd write, with a winking emoji that felt like a slap. I'd read his messages in my dorm, my heart sinking, the glow of my New York world dimming under their disdain. By my senior year, I'd stopped trying to win their approval. I graduated with honors in 2012, my final project, a series of paintings called City Pulse, capturing the raw energy of urban life, earning a standing ovation at NYU's showcase. The crowd roared, my classmates cheering, but my parents' presence in the audience was a cold formality. They sat in the back, their smiles stiff, their congratulations brief. "Well done, Olivia. Have you considered business school? Finance is always an option." Miguel didn't show he was overseeing a bridge project in Tampa, his absence crafts. Every moment a step toward proving that art could be a legacy, not just a pastime. The spark that ignited Rivera Galleries wasn't born in a sleek Manhattan showroom or an auction house's spotlight. It flickered to life in a gritty Brooklyn cafe, where the air smelled of burnt espresso and the tables were scarred with the dreams of 1,000 artists. It was 2013. And I was 23, scraping by on freelance curating gigs that paid just enough to cover my rent and a diet of instant noodles and bodega coffee. My Bushwick apartment was a testament to my hustle, a single easel in a corner, a sagging mattress surrounded by canvases, and walls papered with sketches of gallery layouts. I'd spend my evenings poring over art journals, my eyes burning from the screen's glare, haunted by a single truth. The art world was a walled garden, its gates locked to outsiders, its beauty hoarded by the elite. I couldn't stop thinking, what if I could build a gallery that opened those gates? What if art could belong to everyone? That's when I met Sofia Vega, the catalyst who turned my restless dream into a mission. I was at a Brooklyn art fair, a crowded loft filled with artists pitching their work and collectors sniffing for the next big thing. I'd signed up to show a few of my paintings, my nerves jangling as I explained my vision. A gallery that championed diverse voices, blending contemporary art with accessibility. The room was polite but skeptical, their applause tepid. As I packed up, Sophia approached, her energy like a live wire, her dark eyes sharp with curiosity. "That's not just art," she said, her voice earnest. "That's a revolution. I've seen galleries gatekeep talent for profit. Your vision could change that." We talked until the organizers kicked us out, our ideas spilling over into a nearby diner. By midnight, we were partners, united by a shared dream to redefine the art world. Sophia was everything I wasn't, bold, unflinching, a force who could charm a room or shut it down with a single look. She'd grown up in the Bronx, the daughter of Puerto Rican immigrants, and had fought her way through Sotheby's internship program, learning the art market's inner workings. She brought industry savvy and a knack for strategy to our partnership. I brought the vision, my curatorial eye-blending aesthetics with inclusivity. We set up shop in my apartment, a 400 square foot box with a leaky ceiling and a single window that rattled in the Brooklyn wind. Sophia would arrive with her laptop and a bag of her mom's empanadas, and we'd dive in, surrounded by canvases, exhibition plans, and a growing pile of takeout containers. Our goal was audacious, a gallery chain called Rivera Galleries that would showcase emerging artists, prioritize diversity, and make art accessible to all from collectors to first-time buyers. We weren't just curating, we were trying to rewrite the rules of art, to give every voice a canvas. The early days were a brutal grind, a test of endurance as much as creativity. We cold-called every artist in New York, begging for a chance to show their work, only to hear the same refrain. Galleries are dying. Or, we don't trust new spaces. We'd haul portfolios in Sophia's beat-up van, navigating Manhattan's gridlock to pitch to skeptical landlords who saw us as kids playing at business. Come back when you have a real space. One property manager told us, his tone final. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the water stains on my ceiling, my family's voices echoing. Painting's a hobby. Why can't you be like Miguel? The doubt was a heavy fog, threatening to smother my resolve. Sophia was my lifeline, her conviction unwavering. We're not doing this for them, she'd say, slamming her laptop shut after another rejection. We're doing it for the artists. Keep curating, Liv. Our first exhibition was a gamble, a leap into the unknown. In 2015, we rented a derelict storefront in Williamsburg, its walls peeling but its windows wide, and launched a show with 10 unknown artist-painters, sculptors, and muralists from marginalized communities. We spent 6 months planning, scraping together $5,000 from our savings, skipping meals to afford flyers. The opening night was a risk we had no guarantee anyone would come. I remember standing in that empty space, my heart pounding, as Sophia poured us cheap wine in plastic cups. "This is it," she said, her eyes shining. No turning back. By 8 p.m., the gallery was packed, with collectors, locals, and critics buzzing about the work. We sold half the pieces, and a blog called it A New Dawn for Art. That spark ignited Rivera Galleries' rise, a flame my family would never see. From there, Rivera Galleries grew faster than I dared to dream. We quit freelancing, a terrifying leap that felt like jumping off a cliff with no net. We leased a proper space in Chelsea, its white walls and high ceilings a far cry from our Williamsburg shack. We hired a team, curators who shared our vision, artists who pushed boundaries, marketers who spread our message. I learned to pitch, standing in rooms full of collectors who scoffed at diverse art as a niche fad. As a Latina woman in a whitewashed industry, I faced skepticism at every turn I rolls when I explained inclusivity, patronizing smiles when I talked impact. Nice idea, they'd say, already checking their phones. But where's the profit? Sophia was our secret weapon, her data on market trends and buyer demographics disarming even the coldest investors. While she crunched numbers, I'd unveil our exhibitions, letting the art speak. Slowly, we won them over. By 2019, Rivera Galleries had its first flagship space in Manhattan, a sleek venue that drew art world heavyweights and curious locals alike. Our shows graced Art Forum and the New York Times, our artists' many first-timers landing museum placements. We expanded to Los Angeles, then Miami, our spaces showcasing voices from every corner of the globe. The numbers told a story of their own. By 2023, Rivera Galleries was valued at $100 million, a figure that climbed to $150 million by 2025. We'd just secured a $30 million investment led by Julian Hart, a collector whose influence opened doors. At our first meeting, he leaned across the table, his eyes piercing. "You're not just a gallerist, Olivia," he said. "You're a visionary. Rivera Galleries is the future." His words were the validation I'd never gotten from my family, a balm for the wounds they'd left. But my family? They knew nothing. I'd tried to tell them years ago when Rivera Galleries was just a dream. At a family dinner in 2018, I'd gathered my courage, my hands sweaty under their dining room chandelier. "I'm starting an art gallery," I said, my voice cautious but steady. "It's called Rivera Galleries, and it could change the art world." My father snorted, not even looking up from his steak. "Galleries for doodles? That's not a business, Olivia." My mother patted my hand, her smile condescending. "It's nice to have projects, dear, but you need stability. Have you thought about accounting?" Miguel, home from a project, leaned back, his smirk sharp. "What's it called, crayon corner? Good luck selling that to anyone with a brain." The table laughed, their voices a chorus of dismissal, and I shrank into my chair, my dream reduced to a punchline. That dinner was the last time I shared anything real with them. I stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped hoping for their pride. I didn't tell them when Rivera Galleries opened its first space, or when we hit $100 million, or when I was named a Forbes 30 Under 30. I didn't invite them to our openings, or share the Art Forum article that called me Art's new gatekeeper. Their dismissal had taught me to guard my dreams, to keep them safe from their scorn. But deep down, the ache lingered, the little girl who wanted her parents' respect, her brother's admiration. That ache was a fire, burning brighter with every exhibition, every artist, every life Rivera Galleries touched. As 2025 dawned, Rivera Galleries was at its peak, a beacon of inclusion in an industry desperate for change. But I was restless, haunted by the family I'd left behind. The anniversary invitation was coming, though I didn't know it yet. It would force me to face the people who'd shaped me, to confront the pain I'd buried under my success. Sophia saw it before I did. One night, as we celebrated a new opening, she raised her glass and said, "To you, Liv, you've built something incredible. Now it's time to show the world who you are." I laughed, thinking she meant collectors or critics. But looking back, I think she meant my family. She knew the real battle wasn't on the gallery walls, it was in my soul. The invitation arrived on a crisp March morning in 2025. A gold-embossed card slipped under the door of my Bushwick apartment. I was 35, the founder of Rivera Galleries, a $150 million art empire that had redefined the industry. But that card felt like a summons to judgment. My parents' 35th wedding anniversary was a grand affair, a black-tie gala at a Miami beachfront estate, with 300 guests, accountants, engineers, and local elites gathered to toast the Rivera legacy. The note inside was from my mother, her neat handwriting a quiet command. "Olivia, we expect you to attend. This is a milestone for us. Don't let us down." I stood in my kitchen, the card trembling in my hands, my tea growing cold on the counter. The words "don't let us down" hit like a ledger closing, dragging me back to a lifetime of moments when I'd fallen short. The C on an algebra test that earned my father's lecture, the school play where I forgot my lines, and my mother's smile froze. The family dinners where my voice was drowned out by Miguel's tales of engineering triumphs. I hadn't been to a family event in years, not since Miguel's award ceremony in 2020, where he'd mocked my art projects to a room of colleagues, their laughter cutting deeper than any critic's review. I'd built Rivera Galleries without them, a fortress of success they'd never seen, but this invitation stirred a longing I'd buried. The need to be seen, to prove I wasn't the failure they'd labeled. For days, I left the card on my counter, its presence a constant weight. I'd walk past it on my way to the gallery, my mind churning with indecision. Part of me wanted to toss it, to protect the world I'd created from their judgment. They didn't know about Rivera Galleries show. It had showcased thousands of artists, reached a $150 million valuation, or earned Art Forum's praise. To them, I was still the dreamer, the daughter who'd chosen painting over accounting. Why subject myself to their scorn again? But another part, the girl who'd once idolized her parents' precision, who'd cheered for Miguel's first bridge, whispered that this could be a chance to show them who I'd become. Not for their validation, but for the version of me that still ached for their respect. I brought the invitation to work, seeking Sophia's advice. Our Chelsea gallery was a hive of creativity, canvases leaning against walls, curators planning shows, the air thick with paint and ambition. Sophia was at her desk, reviewing artist submissions, her desk cluttered with empty coffee cups and exhibition notes. I slid the card across and she raised an eyebrow, her dark eyes scanning the gold embossing. "A Miami anniversary gala?" she said, flipping it open. "Fancy. Your parents are a big deal, huh?" I sighed, slumping into a chair. "They are, but they don't know about Rivera Galleries, Sophia. They think I'm a kid playing with paints. If I go, they'll rip me apart." Sophia leaned back, her gaze fierce but warm. She knew my history-ivory cutting remark, every dismissed dream, the years I'd spent building Rivera Galleries in silence. "Liv, you're not that kid anymore," she said, her voice steady. "You're the woman who built a $150 million empire that's changing art. You walk into that gala, you're not just their daughter, you're Olivia Rivera, the art world's queen. Show them what you've done. Not for them, but for you." Her words struck like a match, igniting a courage I'd buried under years of hurt. She was right. I'd faced down skeptical collectors, elitist critics, and an industry that gate-kept beauty. I could face my family. Still, the decision gnawed at me, a tangle of hope and fear that kept me up at night. I paced my apartment, the card a silent taunt on my counter, replaying memories of family gatherings that had left me bruised. There was the Christmas when I was 14, when I'd tried to tell my father about a painting I'd done for school, only for him to cut me off with, "That's nice, Olivia, but have you thought about finance?" Or the Thanksgiving when I was 22, when Miguel, fresh off a bridge project, had smirked and said, "Still doodling? Don't expect a gallery for that." Our relatives had laughed, and I'd burned with shame, retreating to the kitchen, invisible in their world of numbers and steel. Each memory was a brick in the wall I'd built between us, but the invitation threatened to tear it down, exposing the raw, aching need beneath. I called Maria, the artist whose work had launched our first show, now a rising star thanks to Rivera Galleries. We met at a cafe near my gallery, its exposed brick and artisanal tea a far cry from my parents' townhouse. I slid the invitation across the table and she read it, her brow furrowing. "You have to go," she said, her voice fierce, her eyes locking onto mine. "You built Rivera Galleries for artists like me, Olivia. You're a legend. Don't let them make you feel small." Her words echoed Sophia's, a chorus of belief that steadied my resolve. She was right, I wasn't going for my family. I was going for the girl who'd painted in secret, for the woman who'd built an empire, for the artists who believed in me. The weeks before the gala were a blur of nerves and preparation, a high-wire act of balancing my work and my fears. Rivera Galleries was in the middle of a major exhibition, a retrospective of Latin American artists, set to debut in Miami. I threw myself into curating, artist meetings, and press events, using the chaos to drown my anxiety. But the gala loomed, a storm on the horizon. I chose a dress for the occasion, a vibrant red gown from a designer we'd showcased, its bold cut a quiet nod to my style, artistic yet commanding. Sophia insisted on a full makeover hair, makeup, the works dragging me to a salon in Manhattan. "This isn't just a party," she said, grinning as the stylist pinned my hair. "It's your canvas. Paint it." I rehearsed how I'd talk about Rivera Galleries, practicing in my apartment's cracked mirror, my voice steady but my hands shaking. "It's valued at $150 million, I'd say, imagining my father's reaction. It's showcased thousands of artists, praised by Art Forum." I scripted responses to Miguel's inevitable jabs, determined to keep my cool. "Laugh all you want," I'd say, "but my art is bigger than your bridges." I even prepared for my parents' polite dismissals, ready to counter with facts. Our galleries have transformed communities in 3 cities. But at night, alone in my apartment, the doubts crept in. A chorus of what-ifs that kept me staring at the ceiling. What if they laughed? What if they didn't care? What if I walked into that estate and felt like a child again, small and unworthy? The night before the gala, I couldn't sleep, the invitation glowing under my bedside lamp like a challenge. I let myself remember a moment I'd buried, a rare flicker of connection with my family. I was 11, and my mother had taken me to her office, a rare treat. I'd wandered among the ledgers, awed by the neat rows of numbers, the weight of her work. "You'll do great things, Olivia," she'd said. smiling as she adjusted her glasses. I'd believed her then, believed I could be like her, like them. Somewhere along the way, that belief had fractured, replaced by their disappointment and my defiance. Now, on the cusp of facing them again, I wondered, could I reclaim that moment? Could I make them see me, not as the failure they'd labeled, but as the woman who'd surpassed their dreams? Sophia called that night, sensing my nerves through the phone. "You've got this, Liv," she said, her voice a lifeline. "You're not just going to that gala, you're going to blow their minds. Wear that gown like armor." I clung to her words, letting them anchor me. This wasn't just a family event. It was a reckoning, a chance to rewrite my story, to stand tall in the face of their doubt, and to finally let go of the pain I'd carried for so long. The Miami beachfront estate was a vision of opulence, its white columns gleaming under the stars, its terraces overlooking the ocean's endless expanse. It was April 2025, and I stood at the entrance in my red gown, its vibrant hue catching the evening light like a flame, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might shatter. My parents' 35th wedding anniversary gala was a spectacle, a black tie affair with 300 guests, accountants, engineers, and Miami's elite gathered to toast the Rivera legacy. I felt like an intruder, my presence barely noticed among the sea of tailored suits and shimmering dresses, but I straightened my shoulders, smoothed my gown, and stepped into the fray. The grand ballroom was a symphony of wealth, guests mingling under chandeliers dripping with crystals, their laughter mingling with the clink of champagne flutes. A string quartet played Debussy, its notes weaving through the hum of self-important conversation. I scanned the room and spotted my family at the head table, commanding the space as always. My father, Carlos, stood tall in a tailored tuxedo, shaking hands with a bank executive, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow. My mother, Elena, was radiant in a sapphire gown, her smile warm as she charmed a group of CPAs. My brother, Miguel, held court nearby, his charcoal suit accentuating his engineer's confidence, his wit drawing laughs from a cluster of colleagues. They were the Rivera's Miami's pillars of practicality, and I was the outlier, the shadow they'd never bothered to notice. I made my way toward them, my heels clicking against the marble floor, my stomach knotting with every step. The crowd parted slightly, eyes flickering over my gown, some curious, some indifferent. I felt exposed, my dress a bold declaration in a room that thrived on conformity. "Olivia," my mother called, waving me over with a smile that was all politeness, no warmth. Her gaze swept over my gown, lingering just long enough to make me self-conscious, her approval tepid. "You made it," she said, her tone clipped, as if my presence was a minor formality. "You look nice." The word was a concession, and I saw her eyes dart to Miguel, comparing us as always, her pride reserved for him. My father gave a curt nod, his attention already drifting to a guest. "Good to see you, Olivia. Mingle, There are important people here. No questions about my life, my work just a directive to play my part in their perfect tableau." Miguel was worse. He sauntered over, a whiskey glass in hand, his grin sharp as a blade, his engineer's swagger dialed to maximum. "Well, look who's here," he said, loud enough for nearby guests to turn, his voice carrying the mocking lilt I'd dreaded. "Still messing with your little paintings, Liv? Or did you finally get a real job like I told you?" Laughter rippled through his entourage, a mix of engineers and accountants, their chuckles a needle under my skin. I felt my cheeks burn, the old shame rising, the memory of 100 such jabs flooding back. I wanted to snap back, to tell him Rivera Galleries was worth more than his entire firm, that my little paintings had changed lives. But I bit my tongue, my nails digging into my palms, my smile tight. Not yet, I thought. Let him have his moment. I muttered something vague. "Good to see you too, Miguel," and slipped away, taking a seat at a distant table, picking at a plate of grilled shrimp, feeling like a stranger in my own family. The evening unfolded with the Rivera's signature precision, waiters gliding with trays of ceviche, the quartet shifting to Mozart, a procession of speakers taking the stage to praise my parents' legacy. A bank president lauded their financial acumen. An engineer credited Miguel with advancing infrastructure. A family friend spoke of the Rivera commitment to stability. Each speech was a reminder of their pragmatism, and each one made me feel smaller, a footnote in their story. I sat in the shadows, my gown a quiet rebellion, my thoughts a storm of resentment and resolve. I wasn't mentioned in the program, not even a nod in the family bio, my existence erased from their narrative. I gripped my clutch, my knuckles white, the exclusion cutting deeper than I'd expected. Then, everything changed. As the dessert course arrived, key lime tarts with edible gold leaf, a man approached my table, his presence commanding the room like a sudden hush. He was tall, his white hair swept back, his tailored suit exuding quiet authority. I recognized him instantly. Julian Hart, the art critic and collector whose reviews shaped the industry, a legend whose words could make or break a gallery. My heart stopped, my champagne flute trembling in my hand. "Olivia Rivera?" he said, his voice warm but authoritative, his eyes locking onto mine with a spark of recognition. "Founder of Rivera Galleries?" The table went silent, forks pausing, eyes turning. My parents, seated at the head table, froze, their plates forgotten, their faces blank with confusion. Miguel, mingling a few tables away, stopped mid-sentence, his whiskey glass frozen, his jaw dropping. The nearby guests leaned in, sensing a moment, their murmurs fading. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile, my pulse roaring in my ears. "That's me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, though my hand shook under the table. Julian's smile widened, and he turned to the room, raising his voice to carry across the ballroom, his presence silencing the quartet's notes. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his tone commanding every eye, "you're in the presence of a true visionary. Olivia Rivera's Rivera Galleries is a revolution in art, a chain of spaces that champions diverse voices, valued at $150 million, with exhibitions that have reshaped the cultural landscape. Her work has given artists a platform, communities a voice, and the art world a conscience. I've written about her galleries in Art Forum, and they're the future." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs, heads turning, cameras swiveling to capture me, their flashes a sudden storm. Guests whispered, some clapping, others staring in disbelief. I felt like I was floating, my body light with a mix of terror and triumph, the weight of their gazes both exhilarating and overwhelming. Julian wasn't done. He turned back to me, his smile warm now, almost paternal. "Olivia, I'm a huge fan," he said, his voice softening but still carrying. "Your galleries are saving artists who were ignored are now celebrated. Communities that were silenced are now heard. You've built something not just profitable but profound, a legacy that will outlast us all. I didn't expect to see you here, but I'm thrilled." He handed me his card, his eyes gleaming. "We need to talk about what's next. You're just getting started." The crowd burst into applause, a wave of astonishment rippling through the ballroom, relatives and strangers alike staring at me like I was a revelation. My family's reaction was a study in shock. My father's face was pale, his mouth slightly open, his usual authority vanished. My mother's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white, her eyes darting between me and Julian, her composure crumbling. Miguel looked like he'd been slapped, his whiskey trembling, his engineer's swagger shattered, his entourage whispering behind him. I could feel every eye in the room on me, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt like a giant, my heart swelling with a pride I'd never allowed myself to claim. I stood, my legs unsteady but my resolve ironclad, and took the moment Julian offered. "Thank you, Mr. Hart," I said, my voice clear, carrying over the applause. "Rivera Galleries is my heart, my proof that art can change lives, that beauty can be for everyone. I built it despite those who called it a waste, who said I'd never succeed." I paused, my eyes locking on Miguel, then my parents, their silence deafening. "I'm proud to share it here, among family and friends, and I'm just getting started." The crowd roared, some standing, their cheers a validation I'd never expected. Miguel's face flushed red, his eyes avoiding mine, his entourage falling silent. My parents sat frozen, their expressions unreadable, but I saw the flicker of something new, shock, yes, but also the dawning of regret. The rest of the gala passed in a surreal haze. Guests swarmed me, their faces alight with curiosity, asking about Rivera Galleries, wanting selfies, offering business cards. A curator from a local museum thanked me for inspiring her program. A collector begged for a meeting to fund our next show. I smiled, nodded, answered their questions, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying my family's faces, the shock, the discomfort, the realization that they'd been wrong about me all along. Julian stayed for a moment, sharing stories of Rivera Galleries' impact, his praise humbling. "You're a trailblazer, Olivia," he said before leaving. "Don't stop." His words were a crown I'd earned, a weight I was ready to carry. My parents and Miguel kept their distance, their usual charisma replaced by a strained awkwardness. I caught them watching me, their eyes guarded, but they didn't approach. As the quartet played its final set and guests spilled onto the dance floor, I felt a strange mix of triumph and exhaustion. I'd done what I came to do. I'd shown them who I was, my $150 million empire, a truth they couldn't ignore. But the victory was bittersweet, tinged with the pain of years spent unseen. I wondered what came next, whether this moment would change us or simply widen the chasm between us. For now, I let myself bask in the glow of their silence. The weight of their judgment lifted, if only for a night. The gala wound down as midnight approached, the estate's chandeliers dimming, the ballroom emptying as guests drifted to their cars, their laughter echoing across the oceanfront terraces. I stood near the bar, my red gown catching the candlelight, my champagne flute empty but my heart full. Julian Hart's revelation had shifted the night, turning my family's scorn into stunned silence, my $150 million gallery empire a truth they couldn't dismiss. I'd stood in that ballroom and claimed my worth, but the triumph was bittersweet, shadowed by years of hurt, by the silence that still hung between us. I knew a confrontation was inevitable, and as the last guests departed, it found me. My parents approached first, their steps hesitant, their faces a mix of pride and shame. My father's tuxedo was slightly rumpled, his silver hair mussed, his usual authority dimmed. My mother's sapphire gown shimmered in the low light, but her composure was fraying, her eyes glistening with something I couldn't name: regret, perhaps, or the weight of realization. They stopped a few feet away, as if unsure how to bridge the distance, their hands clasped like they were bracing for a storm. "Olivia," my mother said, her voice soft, almost fragile, "can we talk?" I nodded, my throat tight, and followed them to a quiet corner of the ballroom, where velvet chairs sat under a fading chandelier's glow. My mother spoke first, her hands twisting together, her voice trembling. "Olivia, why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her eyes searching mine, desperate for an answer. "Your galleries, Rivera Galleries, they're extraordinary. We had no idea." Her words were earnest, but they sparked a fire in me, years of pain rising like a tide. "I tried," I said, my voice calm but edged with steel, each word a release of the hurt I'd carried. "I told you about Rivera Galleries years ago when it was just an idea. You called it a waste, said it was childish. Every time I tried to share my work, you shut me down. You didn't ask, Mom. You didn't care enough to listen." She flinched, her eyes welling with tears, her hands clutching her purse like a lifeline. For once, she didn't interrupt, didn't deflect. She listened, and I saw the weight of her mistakes settle on her shoulders. I turned to my father, his face pale, his posture stiff, his usual command absent. "And you, Dad?" I said, my voice steady, my eyes locked on his. "You told me I was wasting my talent, that I'd never be like Miguel. You made me feel like my dreams were nothing, like I was nothing. Do you know how hard it was to keep going, to build Rivera Galleries despite that, to believe in myself when you didn't?" My words hung in the air, heavy with a decade's worth of hurt, each one a brick I'd carried too long. My father cleared his throat, his voice faltering, his hands clasped as if to steady himself. "Olivia, He paused, the words catching, and I saw the effort it took to continue. "We were wrong. I was wrong. We didn't understand what you were doing, and we should have. Your work, it's remarkable. I'm proud of you. Truly, proud." The word I'd craved my entire life, offered now in a moment of reckoning, felt like a hollow echo. Proud now when the world had validated me, when Julian Hart had crowned me? Where was that pride when I was a girl? Painting in secret, begging for their belief. It's not enough to be proud now, I said, my voice trembling but resolute, my eyes never leaving his. You spent years making me feel like I wasn't enough, like Miguel was the only one who mattered. You compared me to him, dismissed my dreams, erased me from your story. If you want to be part of my life, you have to show me you've changed. No more comparisons. No more dismissing my work. I need you to see me for who I am, not who you wanted me to be. My voice broke, but I held his gaze, refusing to look away. He nodded, his face tight with regret, his eyes glistening, and for a moment, I saw the man who'd once shown me his ledgers, the father I'd lost to his expectations. Miguel was the hardest, the confrontation I both dreaded and craved. I found him by the terrace, his charcoal suit wrinkled, his tie loosened, his face flushed with a mix of shame and defiance. He'd avoided me since Julian's speech, his usual swagger gone, his entourage dispersed, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He stood by a railing overlooking the ocean, his hands fidgeting, his eyes avoiding mine. "Liv," he said, his voice low, barely audible over the waves. "I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms, bracing myself, my heart a tangle of anger and pity. Miguel had been my tormentor for years, his jabs sharper than anyone's, his laughter a constant reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let him stew in his regret. But I stayed, needing to understand why he'd hurt me so deeply. "I'm sorry," he said, the words spilling out in a rush, his voice breaking. "I was awful to you, Liv. I didn't know about Rivera Galleries, about what you've done. I thought you were just messing with paints, wasting your time. I was wrong, and I'm so ashamed." His voice cracked, his eyes red-rimmed, and I saw something I'd never seen in Miguel, unguarded vulnerability. He wasn't the untouchable engineer now, the golden child who'd always outshone me. He was just my brother, flawed and human, grappling with the weight of his mistakes. His apology was raw, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I studied him, my anger warring with a flicker of compassion, my voice quiet but firm. "You didn't just think I was wasting my time, Miguel," I said, each word deliberate. "You made sure I felt it. Every time you mocked me, every time you laughed at my work, you made me feel small. You compared me to you, knowing I'd never measure up in their eyes. Why? Why did it matter so much to tear me down?" He looked away, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the railing. "I was jealous," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper, the confession tearing through his polished facade. "You were always so free. You did what you loved, even when Mom and Dad hated it. You built something real, something that matters. I followed their plan engineering projects, the firm because I had to. I was the golden child, and it was exhausting, always proving myself, always afraid of falling. I saw you breaking away, and I hated you for it. I'm so sorry, Liv." His words stunned me, peeling back the layers of his success to reveal a man trapped by the same expectations that had nearly crushed me. I wanted to stay angry, to hold onto the pain he'd caused, but I saw the truth in his eyes, the weight of his own struggles, and I remembered us as kids drawing together in the backyard, sharing secrets before ambition drove us apart. "I forgive you," I said, and the words felt like a release, a weight lifting from my chest, though my voice remained firm. "But things have to change, Miguel. I'm not your punching bag anymore. If you want to be my brother, you have to respect Memi work, my life, all of it. No more jabs. No more comparisons. Can you do that?" He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks, his voice choked. "I can. I will. I want to fix this, Liv." I felt a fragile hope, a thread of possibility that we could rebuild, not as rivals but as siblings. It would take time, effort, trust we'd have to earn, but it was a start, a crack in the wall we'd built between us. As I left the estate, the warm Miami air brushing my skin, I felt lighter than I had in years. The gala hadn't just been a triumph, it had been a liberation. I'd spent so long craving my family's approval, measuring my worth by their standards, letting their scorn define me. But standing in that ballroom, hearing Julian's words, seeing their faces, I'd realized I didn't need their validation. Rivera Galleries was my legacy, my proof that I could inspire, spark change, and stand tall. I was enough more than enough. I walked to my car, my gown shimmering under the moonlight, and felt a new strength, not just as a gallerist, but as a woman who'd claimed her place. In the months that followed, Rivera Galleries soared higher, its profile boosted by Julian's endorsement. The New York Times ran a feature on our work, calling me Art's New Conscience, and our exhibitions drew record crowds, from collectors to school groups. We opened new spaces in Chicago and Paris, our artists gaining global acclaim, our mission resonating with a world hungry for inclusion. But the real transformation was with my family, a slow, fractured shift that felt both foreign and hopeful. My parents reached out first, their calls tentative, their voices stripped of their usual command. They invited me to dinner at their townhouse, a quiet affair without the usual parade of accountants. For the first time, they asked about Rivera Galleries' real questions, not polite deflections. "How do you choose your artists?" my father asked, his brow furrowed with genuine curiosity. "What's it like running a business like that?" my mother added, her eyes soft, her hands still for once. I answered, my voice steady, sharing stories of artists like Maria, of communities transformed by our work. They listened, their pride unspoken but palpable, and I felt a crack in the wall between us. But I was cautious, my heart guarded. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. I set clear boundaries, my voice firm at one dinner. "No more comparisons to Miguel," I said, my eyes meeting theirs. "No more dismissing my work as a hobby. If you want me in your life, you have to respect what I've built." They nodded, their agreement a promise I'd hold them to, and we started small weekly calls, lunches where they asked about my artists, my vision, their questions a bridge we were building one careful step at a time. Miguel was a different journey, one fraught with the ghosts of our past. We met for coffee in Miami, a neutral space far from our parents' townhouse. He was nervous, his engineer's polish gone, his hands fidgeting with his cup, his eyes searching for a way in. "I meant what I said," he began, his voice low, raw. "I'm sorry, Liv, I want to fix this." I studied him, searching for sincerity, and found it in his eyes, in the way his shoulders slumped, free of his usual bravado. He admitted the pressure of being the golden child, the fear of failing our parents, the way he'd used me to feel better about himself. "I was scared," he said, his voice breaking. "Scared of losing their approval, of not being enough. I took it out on you and I hate myself for it. I shared my own scars, the years of feeling less than, the nights I'd painted through tears, and for the first time, we talked as equals, not rivals, peeling back the layers of our shared pain. We began to rebuild, slowly, cautiously, like restoring a damaged canvas. Miguel visited my Miami gallery, his jaw dropping at the buzz of our team, the walls alive with new works. He asked questions about our artists, his engineer's mind intrigued by our logistics. I invited him to an opening, where he watched collectors bid on pieces, their faces lighting up. "You did this," he said afterward, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you, Liv." The words hit like a shockwave, the validation I'd never expected, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known was possible between us. We weren't fully healed, trust would take time, wounds would linger, but we were trying, and that was enough. Sophia was my rock through it all, my partner in every sense but the romantic. We'd sit in our gallery late at night, eating takeout, debriefing the gala and its fallout. "You slayed that dragon," she said, grinning over a plate of empanadas. "Now what's next?" I laughed, but her question lingered, a challenge to dream bigger. The gala had changed me, not just with my family, but within myself. I'd spent so long chasing their approval, letting their scorn define my worth, but proving them wrong had shown me I didn't need it. Rivera Galleries was my purpose, my proof that I could create beauty, spark change, and stand tall. I was enough more than enough. I threw myself into Rivera Galleries with renewed fire, launching new exhibitions, expanding to underserved communities, dreaming of global impact. Every artist's letter, every visitor's thank you, was a reminder of why I'd started. Maria, now a global name, visited our New York space, her eyes shining as she hugged me. "You changed my life," she said, and I knew I'd done something lasting. My family was part of my life again, but on my terms, their respect earned through time and effort. I'd forgiven them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to be free. The gala had been a turning point, a moment when I'd claimed my place, not just in their world, but in my own. I was Olivia Rivera, the woman who'd painted a revolution, who'd faced her family's doubt and emerged stronger, who'd found her strength and would never let it be diminished again.